What happens when entitlement meets duty? When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Today's story will shock you as we witness how a social media-obsessed woman learned the hard way that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Before we dive in, make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Now let's get into this incredible story. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Wellington Palace, its ancient granite walls gleaming like molten gold in the early light. Tourists gathered in eager clusters, their cameras poised to capture the majesty of one of Britain's most prestigious royal residences. The air buzzed with excited whispers and the occasional click of shutters. A normal morning at one of the country's most visited attractions. Among the crowd, Shelly Thompson stood out like a peacock in a penguin colony. Her hot pink tracksuit stretched across her ample frame, matched perfectly with leopard-print sneakers that squeaked against the ancient stones. A bedazzled phone case caught the morning light as she held her device at arm's length, her heavily mascara'd eyes fixed on her own image in the screen. "What's up, my Shelly squad?" she announced to her live stream, her voice carrying across the courtyard with the subtlety of a foghorn. "We're coming to you live from Fancy Pants Wellington Palace, and today we're gonna shake things up a little." Her followers began flooding the chat with excited emoji reactions. Shelly had built her TikTok following of 50,000 devoted fans through what she called reality checks, confrontational pranks designed to knock stuck-up people down a peg or two. Today's target stood motionless at the palace gates, Royal Guard James Barrett, though Shelly neither knew nor cared about his name. "Look at this guy," she stage-whispered to her phone, panning to show the statuesque guard in his ceremonial red uniform and bearskin hat, acting all high and mighty, like he's better than everyone else. Well, guess what? Nobody's better than your girl, Shelly. The guard remained motionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, as generations of royal guards had done before him. His polished boots gleamed in the morning sun, his uniform pristine, a living symbol of centuries of tradition and discipline. "All right, Shelly squad," she continued, adjusting her pink velour scrunchie. "Let's see how long Mr. Fancy Pants can keep up his act. Time to give him the Shelly special." In the growing crowd, Tom and Linda Parker exchanged uncomfortable glances. Their teenage daughter had dragged them to Wellington Palace specifically to see the changing of the guard, not to witness whatever spectacle was about to unfold. Nearby, Jessica Chen, a legitimate travel influencer, slowly lowered her professional camera, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Shelly waddled closer to the guard, her rhinestone-encrusted phone held high. "Hey there, soldier boy," she called out, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "You must be so important, standing there all day doing nothing. Do they pay you extra to act like a statue, or is that just your natural personality?" The guard's expression remained unchanged, his discipline unwavering. What Shelly couldn't know, was that James Barrett wasn't just any guard. With 15 years of military service, including 2 tours in active combat zones, he'd been specially selected for the elite unit that protected Wellington Palace. His apparent stillness masked a constant state of vigilance, his trained eyes continuously scanning the crowd for any sign of threat. "Oh my God, you guys," Shelly giggled to her livestream. "He's trying so hard. Let's see how long he can keep this up. Don't forget to share this stream. We're about to make history." The chat exploded with a mix of encouragement and criticism. "Go, Shelly! Show him who's boss. This is so disrespectful. Girl, you're gonna get arrested. Slay Queen!" As Shelly prepared her next move, she remained blissfully unaware of the security cameras tracking her every motion, or of the plainclothes security officer, David Wilson, who had already noted her disruptive behavior. She was equally oblivious To the subtle change in atmosphere as a man in a dark jacket, Marcus Cooper, lingered near the restricted area, his hand never straying far from the suspicious bulge beneath his coat. "All right, Shelly squad," she announced, pulling out a bag of cheese puffs from her oversized designer knockoff purse. "Let's see how Mr. Serious handles a little snack attack. Don't forget to like and share, because this is about to get wild." Little did Shelly know, she was about to learn a lesson that no amount of social media followers could prepare her for. The tension in the palace courtyard thickened as Shelly Thompson dug deeper into her bag of cheese puffs, orange dust already coating her manicured fingers. Her live stream count had doubled since she'd started her performance, with over 2,000 viewers now eagerly watching the unfolding scene. "Watch this, Shelly squad," she announced, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "I bet our fancy friend here is just dying for a snack. Must be hungry, standing here all day like a mannequin." She pulled out a single cheese puff, holding it inches from James Barrett's face. The guard's expression remained impassive, though his highly trained senses had already registered multiple potential security concerns in his peripheral vision. Marcus Cooper had shifted his position again, moving closer to the restricted access point while appearing to text on his phone. To the casual observer, he looked like any other tourist, but Barrett's years of experience told him otherwise. The man's shoes were too practical for a tourist, his jacket too heavy for the mild weather, and his movements too calculated to be random. "Hello? Earth to Soldier Boy?" Shelly waved the cheese puff in front of Barrett's face, leaving a faint orange trail in the air. "Don't you want a little taste? Come on, I know you're hungry under all that fancy dress-up stuff." From the growing crowd, Linda Parker tugged at her husband's sleeve. "Tom, someone should stop this," she whispered, but Tom shook his head slightly. "Best not to get involved," he muttered back, though his expression showed clear disapproval. Jessica Chen had stopped recording her travel content entirely, her professional camera hanging forgotten around her neck as she watched the scene with growing concern. She'd visited numerous royal sites across Europe for her travel blog, but she'd never witnessed such blatant disrespect. "Oh my God, you guys," Shelly squealed to her phone. "He's like totally frozen. Maybe he's broken." She punctuated her words by popping a cheese puff into her own mouth, deliberately letting crumbs fall onto the immaculate courtyard stones. "Should we try to fix him?" The live stream chat was going wild. "OMG, Shelly, you're crazy. This is getting out of hand. Security's gonna come for sure. Do the dance. Do the dance." Encouraged by her viewers' reactions, Shelly began what she called her royal dance, a deliberately awkward series of movements she'd choreographed for her TikTok followers. "This always works on stuck-up people," she announced, beginning to sway back and forth, her pink tracksuit rustling with each exaggerated movement. What Shelly didn't notice was David Wilson, the plainclothes security officer, speaking quietly into his concealed radio. "Subject continuing disruptive behavior at Gate 1. Approaching harassment level. Stand by." His eyes never left Shelly, but he was equally aware of Marcus Cooper's continued suspicious movements. "Come on, everyone," Shelly called out to B. The crowd still dancing. "Don't you want to see Mr. Serious break character? Let's make him smile." A few children in the crowd giggled, but most onlookers turned away in embarrassment or filmed the scene with expressions of disapproval. Sarah Mitchell, another undercover security agent, had positioned herself closer to Marcus Cooper, pretending to take selfies while monitoring his every move. Through her earpiece, she heard Wilson's update about Shelly, but her focus remained on the more significant potential threat. "You guys," Shelly addressed her stream, slightly out of breath from her dancing, "I think we need to step it up a notch. Who wants to see me give this guard a makeover?" She reached into her oversized bag again, this time pulling out a pink lipstick. The chat exploded with a mix of encouragement and horror. James Barrett maintained his stationed position, but His highly trained mind was processing multiple scenarios. Marcus Cooper had now made 3 passes by the restricted access point, each time pausing to seemingly check his phone. The bulge in his jacket had shifted slightly, possibly a concealed device rather than a weapon based on its shape and movement. "Time for some beauty tips," Shelly announced, uncapping the lipstick with a flourish. "Every soldier needs a little glam. Am I right, Shelly Squad?" She moved closer to Barrett, her livestream count now approaching 3,000 viewers. George Martinez, manning his souvenir stand nearby, shook his head in disapproval. In his 15 years selling trinkets outside Wellington Palace, he'd seen all sorts of tourist behavior, but something about this felt different, more deliberately provocative. Margaret Davis, an elderly regular visitor to the palace grounds, clutched her handbag tighter as she watched the scene unfold. "In my day," she muttered to no one in particular, "there'd be consequences for such behavior."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
As Shelly raised the lipstick toward Barrett's face, David Wilson made a subtle hand signal to his team. They needed to intervene before this situation escalated further, but they couldn't risk drawing attention away from Marcus Cooper's increasingly suspicious activities. "All right, Mr. Serious," Shelly cooed, her phone held high to capture every moment. "Let's add a little color to those perfect little lips of yours. Pink is definitely your shade." The lipstick was inches from Barrett's face when a firm hand gripped Shelly's shoulder. "Ma'am," David Wilson's voice was quiet but carried an unmistakable authority. "Step away from the guard immediately." Shelly's eyes lit up. This was exactly the kind of drama her followers craved. "Oh, look, everyone," she announced to her stream. "The fun police are here. Don't worry, Shelly Squad, your girl's got this handled." But as she turned to face Wilson, something in his expression made her usual confidence waver. This wasn't the reaction she'd been expecting. This wasn't part of her plan at all, and in that moment of hesitation, all hell broke loose. The tension in Wellington Palace's courtyard shattered like glass as several events unfolded simultaneously. David Wilson's grip remained firm on Shelly's shoulder, but his attention had suddenly shifted. Through his earpiece came Sarah Mitchell's urgent whisper, "Target moving, device visible, southeast corner." Marcus Cooper had finally made his move. His hand emerged from his jacket, clutching what appeared to be a small electronic device with blinking lights and protruding antennas. To the tourists, it might have looked like a complex camera or radio, but to the trained security team, it was something far more sinister. Shelly, still holding her phone high, remained oblivious to the real danger. "Get your hands off me," she demanded, trying to shrug away from Wilson's grip. "My followers aren't going to be happy about this. I know my rights." Her live stream chat was exploding. "Oh snap, it's getting real. Security doesn't play. Run, Shelly. This is better than reality TV." James Barrett, the royal guard who had endured Shelly's harassment, remained perfectly still, but his trained eyes had tracked every movement Cooper had made. Through years of experience, he knew that the most dangerous moments often came when attention was divided, exactly like now. "I said let go!" Shelly's voice rose to a shrill pitch that echoed across the courtyard. She tried to twist away from Wilson, her pink tracksuit rustling with the movement. "This is assault. My followers are recording everything." "Ma'am?" Wilson's voice remained calm, but carried an edge of urgency. "This is your final warning. Step away from the guard and—" His words were cut short by a sudden burst of static that filled the air. Every phone in the vicinity, including Shelly's live streaming device, went dark. Screens flickered and died as Cooper activated his signal jammer, designed to disrupt all electronic communications within the palace grounds. "What the—" Shelly stared at her dead phone in disbelief. "What did you do to my stream?" But Wilson's Attention was elsewhere. Cooper had begun moving quickly toward the restricted access point, and two more figures, Emily White and Daniel Ross, had emerged from the crowd, converging on the same location. This wasn't just about disrupting communications, it was coordinated. "Code Red," Wilson spoke into his now useless radio, knowing the team had prepared for such electronic failures. "Execute Pattern Delta." James Barrett, finally breaking his statuesque pose, moved with lightning speed. His ceremonial uniform did nothing to hinder the precision of his movement as he stepped forward, simultaneously pushing Shelly safely behind him and positioning himself to intercept Cooper's advance. "Oh my God!" Shelly stumbled backward, her designer knockoff bag spilling its contents across the courtyard stones, cheese puffs scattered like orange confetti. He actually moved. Did everyone see? She stopped, realizing her phone was still dead, her precious live stream cut off. The crowd's reaction shifted from amusement to confusion to fear. Tom Parker pulled his wife and daughter behind a stone pillar. Jessica Chen, the travel influencer, found herself backing away, her professional instincts telling her something. Sirius was unfolding. "Everyone clear the courtyard!" Wilson's authoritative voice carried across the space. "Security procedure in effect. Please move toward the exits in an orderly fashion." Cooper, realizing his team had been identified, abandoned subtlety. He sprinted toward the restricted access point, the signal jammer still clutched in one hand, while reaching for something else in his jacket with the other. Emily White and Daniel Ross moved to flank him, their coordinated movements revealing their training. But they hadn't counted on James Barrett's combat experience. The Royal Guard moved with practiced efficiency, his ceremonial uniform belying the warrior beneath. In 3 precise steps, he had positioned himself between Cooper and his target. Shelly, now pressed against a wall, watched with growing horror as her funny content dissolved into something far more serious. "What's happening?" she whispered, but no one was paying attention to her anymore. Cooper tried to dodge around Barrett, but the guard's response was immediate and decisive. In one fluid motion, Barrett deflected Cooper's attempt to raise the second device, using the man's own momentum to throw him off balance. Cooper stumbled, the signal jammer clattering across the cobblestones. Sarah Mitchell emerged from her cover, her tourist disguise forgotten as she intercepted Emily White. The two women grappled briefly before Mitchell's superior training became evident. White was face down on the cobblestones in seconds, Mitchell's knee firmly in her back. Daniel Ross, seeing his companion subdued, turned to flee, but found his path blocked by additional security personnel who had materialized from the dispersing crowd. The entire takedown had taken less than 30 seconds. Shelly Thompson stood frozen, her mouth slightly open as the scene unfolded before her. Her pink tracksuit was covered in dust from where she'd stumbled, cheese puff residue still coating her fingers. The guard she'd spent the last 15 minutes mocking had just neutralized what appeared to be a serious security threat. "Ma'am," Wilson approached her again, his tone different now, "we need you to come with us." Shelly found her voice, though it came out as a squeak. I didn't know. I was just making content. I didn't." "Your content," Wilson cut her off, "nearly compromised a surveillance operation that's been in place for weeks. Your interference could have given these suspects the distraction they needed to succeed." The implications of his words hit Shelly like a physical blow. She watched as Cooper, White, and Ross were efficiently handcuffed and led away by security personnel. The signal jammer lay where it had fallen, now being carefully examined by a specialist in protective gear. James Barrett had returned to his post, resuming his guard position as if nothing had happened. But now, Shelly saw him differently. The stillness she had mocked wasn't a performance, it was focus. The dedication she had ridiculed wasn't empty ceremony, it was duty. What? She swallowed hard. What were they trying to do? Wilson studied her for a moment before responding. That's classified. But let's just say your little social media show almost provided the perfect cover for something far more serious than getting likes and views. Shelly Thompson sat in a stark interview room within Wellington Palace's security wing, her pink tracksuit now wrinkled and stained, her carefully styled hair falling flat. The room's fluorescent lights were unforgiving, casting harsh shadows that seemed to emphasize every poor decision that had led to this moment. Let me get this straight, David Wilson said, sitting across from her with a tablet displaying screenshots from her terminated livestream. You came here specifically to harass a royal guard for social media content. Shelly shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Without her phone, without her audience, she felt strangely vulnerable. I wasn't harassing him, she protested weakly. I was just trying to make entertaining content. My followers love it when you disrespect people doing their jobs? Wilson's voice carried a weight that made Shelly shrink further into her chair. When you interfere with security personnel during active surveillance operations. In the corner of the room, Sarah Mitchell stood silently, her tourist disguise replaced by a crisp security uniform. Her presence served as a reminder of how badly Shelly had misread the entire situation. I didn't know, Shelly whispered, then louder. How was I supposed to know? He was just standing there. Wilson leaned forward, his expression stern but not unkind. That's exactly the point, Ms. Thompson. You didn't know. You didn't think about what that guard's actual role might be. You saw what you wanted to see. A prop for your entertainment. Through the room's small window, Shelly could see other security personnel moving purposefully through the corridor. The magnitude of the operation she had accidentally stumbled into was beginning to sink in. The suspects you saw apprehended, Wilson continued, sliding photographs across the table, were part of a sophisticated network we've been tracking for months. Marcus Cooper, Emily White, and Daniel Ross, all trained operatives with extensive background in electronic warfare and infiltration. Shelly stared at the photos, recognizing the individuals who had been tackled in the courtyard. They looked different in these surveillance images, more professional, more dangerous. The device they were carrying, Wilson explained, showing her another photo, was a military-grade signal jammer, modified for this specific operation. But that was just the first phase of their plan. Sarah Mitchell stepped forward, placing more documents on the table. They were planning to disrupt palace communications during next week's diplomatic summit. The signal jammer was meant to create a window of opportunity for a much larger breach. Shelly's hands trembled as she looked at the evidence before her. And I was... She couldn't finish the sentence. You were providing the perfect distraction, Wilson completed her thought. Your little social media spectacle had drawn everyone's attention. In any other circumstance, that might have been exactly what they needed. A knock at the door interrupted them. Another security officer entered, whispering something to Wilson. He nodded, then turned back to Shelly. The guard you were harassing, James Barrett, he's here to speak with you. Shelly's stomach churned. Do I have to? Yes, Wilson's response was immediate. You do. The door opened again and James Barrett entered. He had changed from his ceremonial uniform into a more standard military dress, but his bearing was no less impressive. Shelly found herself unable to meet his eyes. Ms. Thompson, Barrett's voice was surprisingly gentle, though it carried the unmistakable authority of someone used to being heard. I believe we have some things to discuss. Shelly managed to look up, expecting to see anger or contempt. Instead, she found herself facing a calm, professional demeanor that somehow made her feel even worse. I'm sorry, she blurted out. I didn't. I never thought. No, Barrett agreed, taking a seat. You didn't think. And that's what we need to address. He placed a folder on the table. "Do you know what my actual job entails, Ms. Thompson?" Shelly shook her head. "I'm not just a ceremonial guard. I'm part of an elite security unit tasked with protecting one of Britain's most significant diplomatic venues." "That's standing around," you mocked. "That's active surveillance. The stupid uniform you ridiculed. It's a symbol of authority that helps us hide in plain sight." Wilson pulled up more footage on his tablet. "While you were dancing and waving cheese puffs in his face, Guard Barrett was tracking 3 known security threats, coordinating with our surveillance team, and maintaining a tactical position that would allow him to respond to any sudden moves." "Which is exactly what he did," Sarah Mitchell added. "His position and focus allowed him to intercept Cooper before he could fully activate the secondary device." Shelley's eyes widened. "Secondary device?" Barrett nodded grimly. "The signal jammer was just the beginning. They had equipment capable of accessing secured diplomatic channels during next week's summit that could have compromised sensitive international communications. All while thousands of your followers watched you mock the very people preventing that from happening," Wilson added, his words hitting Shelley like physical blows. "My followers." Shelley's voice cracked. "Oh God, they all saw. I mean, before the signal went down." "Yes," Wilson confirmed. "Your live stream was recorded. The footage is now part of an active security investigation. Additionally, we'll need to discuss the legal implications of your actions today." Shelley's face went pale. "Legal implications?" Barrett raised a hand. "That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I want you to understand something." He waited until Shelley met his gaze. "What you did today wasn't just disrespectful. It was dangerous. Not just to me, but to everyone in that courtyard. Your need for attention for content nearly compromised months of careful planning." "The suspects we apprehended," Sarah Mitchell interjected, "were waiting for exactly this kind of chaos. A crowd focused on a spectacle, security seemingly distracted, communications disrupted by their tech. It would have been perfect." Shelley's lower lip trembled. "I never meant. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." "Intentions don't always matter," Barrett replied firmly. "Actions do. And your actions today demonstrated a complete disregard for security protocol and basic human respect." The weight of her actions pressed down on Shelly Thompson like a physical force as she sat in that stark interview room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Her perfectly manicured nails, now chipped from her earlier stumble, nervously picked at the rhinestones on her phone case. The device still dead from the signal jammer's effects. "So what happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The confidence that had fueled her Shelley special performance had evaporated completely. David Wilson exchanged glances with James Barrett before responding. "That depends on several factors, Ms. Thompson. First, we need to discuss the extent of your social media activities." Sarah Mitchell stepped forward, placing a laptop on the table. The screen displayed multiple screenshots from Shelley's various social media accounts: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Each one showed similar pranks targeting various officials, security personnel, and public servants. "This isn't your first time interfering with security personnel, is it?" Mitchell's tone was professional, but carried an edge of disapproval. She clicked through several videos. Shelley harassing a museum guard, mocking a courthouse security officer, dancing around a shopping center patrol. "Those were different," Shelley protested weakly. "They were just... nobody got hurt." "Nobody got hurt," Barrett repeated slowly, "because you were lucky. But today, your luck ran out. Today, you interfered with an active security operation targeting individuals who posed a genuine threat to public safety." Wilson pulled out a formal-looking document. "The Crown Prosecution Service takes these matters very seriously, Ms. Thompson. interfering with security personnel, compromising surveillance operations, creating public disturbances at protected sites. These aren't minor offenses. Shelly's face drained of color. Are you arresting me? That's one option, Wilson acknowledged. However, we have an alternative proposition. Barrett leaned forward, his posture commanding attention without being threatening. We believe your platform could be put to better use, Ms. Thompson. Your followers clearly respond to your content. What if, instead of undermining security personnel, you helped educate people about what we really do? Shelly blinked, confused. You want me to make videos about security? We want you to help prevent others from making the same mistakes you did, Sarah Mitchell clarified. To show your followers the real consequences of treating security personnel like entertainment props, Wilson pushed forward another document. We're prepared to handle this as a teaching opportunity rather than a criminal matter, provided you agree to our terms. Shelly's hands trembled as she read through the agreement. She would need to make a public apology, delete all previous videos involving harassment of security personnel, and create new content highlighting the importance of respecting security protocols. Additionally, Barrett added, you'll spend 1 week shadowing our training program, with appropriate security clearance, of course. You'll learn firsthand what goes into protecting sites like Wellington Palace. A whole week? Shelly's voice cracked. Would you prefer 3 to 6 months in court proceedings? Wilson asked mildly. Just then, another security officer knocked and entered the room, whispering something to Wilson. His expression tightened. Miss Thompson, he said, turning back. To Shelly, there's something you need to see. The laptop screen switched to a news website. Shelly's stomach dropped as she saw screenshots from her live stream plastered across the page. The headline read, Social Media Prankster Nearly Compromises Major Security Operation at Wellington Palace. The story's going viral, Sarah Mitchell commented, scrolling through various news sites. Your followers are sharing it everywhere, though probably not in the way you'd hoped. Shelly watched in horror as clips from her live stream played across the screen, now intercut with security footage showing Cooper and his team moving into position. The contrast between her dancing and waving cheese puffs while trained operatives prepared to breach palace security was devastating. Oh God, she whispered, watching her own face contort with exaggerated expressions as she mocked Barrett. In the security footage playing alongside, Cooper could be seen checking his signal jammer, Emily White moving into position, Daniel Ross surveying the restricted access point. The public reaction is significant, Wilson noted, showing the comment sections. Shelly's former followers were turning on her en masse. Can't believe I used to think this was funny. She could have got people hurt. Unfollowing. This is just shameful. Hope she gets charged for this. Tears welled up in Shelly's eyes. I can't handle this. My whole account. My followers. Your followers deserve to know the truth, Barrett said firmly. They deserve to understand that security isn't a joke, that the people you target for content are doing vital work. Sarah Mitchell placed a reassuring hand on Shelly's shoulder. This can be a turning point, Miss Thompson. You can use this moment to make a real difference. The next morning dawned bright and clear over Wellington Palace, but Shelly Thompson felt anything but bright as she walked through the staff entrance, escorted by Sarah Mitchell. Her usual flashy attire had been replaced by standard-issue training. Clothes, navy blue tactical pants, and a plain black polo shirt. Her phone, finally functioning again, remained switched off in her pocket. First day of training, Mitchell said, scanning her credentials at a secure door. Are you ready? Shelly nodded numbly. After yesterday's revelation and hours of discussion, She had signed the agreement. It was this or face legal consequences, though if she was honest with herself, something beyond fear of prosecution had influenced her decision. "Through here," Mitchell guided her into a briefing room where several other security personnel were already gathered. James Barrett stood at the front, now dressed in tactical training gear rather than his ceremonial uniform. The others turned to look at Shelly, their expressions professionally neutral, but their eyes evaluating. "Ms. Thompson," Barrett acknowledged her presence. "Please take a seat. We're about to begin our morning briefing." Shelly slid into an empty chair, acutely, aware of how out of place she felt. Her carefully manicured nails seemed garish against the tactical gear surrounding her. Her heavily made-up face a stark contrast to the practical appearance of the other personnel. "Today's agenda," Barrett began, pulling up a presentation on the wall screen. "First, we'll review yesterday's incident and the lessons learned. Then we'll move into basic security protocols and threat assessment." The screen displayed security footage from the previous day. Shelly cringed as she watched herself prancing around Barrett, waving cheese puffs in his face. But now, with the camera angles synchronized, she could see what she'd missed before. "Note Cooper's movement pattern," Barrett pointed out. While Ms. Thompson was creating her distraction, he made 3 preliminary passes of the restricted area. Each time, he was testing our response protocols. The footage continued, showing Emily White and Daniel Ross taking up their positions. From this perspective, their coordination was obvious. Every movement calculated, every position strategic. "If I may ask," one of the security officers raised his hand, "how did they obtain the modified signal jammer? That's military grade. Technology." "Excellent question," Barrett nodded. "Ms. Mitchell, would you like to brief the team on what we've learned?" Sarah Mitchell stood, replacing Barrett at the front of the room. "The device was sourced through a network we've been tracking for months. Cooper and his team are part of a larger organization that specializes in breaching high-security facilities." She pulled up new images, blueprints, technical specifications, surveillance photos. Their plan wasn't just to disrupt communications. They intended to use the chaos to access our secure server room. Once inside, they would have had potential access to diplomatic communications, security protocols, and classified documents. Shelly felt her stomach turn. She raised her hand hesitantly, surprised by her own courage to speak. "But why during the day? Wouldn't it be easier at night?" The room fell silent. Barrett's expression showed a hint of approval at the question. "Actually, Ms. Thompson, that's an astute observation," he said. "During daylight hours, our visible security presence is highest. The ceremonial guards, the tourist patrols, the obvious cameras. This can make covert operations easier because everyone's distracted by the show," Shelly completed the thought, understanding dawning. "Like I was, like I made everyone else be." "Exactly," Mitchell confirmed. "Tourist activity provides excellent cover. It's why we maintain constant vigilance, regardless of how ceremonial or theatrical our presence might appear to observers." The briefing continued, diving deep into security protocols, surveillance techniques, and threat assessment. To her own surprise, Shelly found herself engaged, asking questions, taking notes. The world she had mocked was revealing itself to be far more complex and vital than she'd imagined. During a break, she checked her phone briefly. Her social media. Notifications had exploded, a mix of support, criticism, and media requests. But one comment caught her eye. "Hope you learned something from this. Real respect to those guards." "Everything okay?" Mitchell asked, noticing Shelly's contemplation. I think I need to make a video," Shelly said slowly. "Not like before. Something different, something real." Barrett, overhearing, approached their conversation. "What did you have in mind?" "My followers need to see this. The real work, the training, the purpose behind it all. Not as a prank or joke, but as... She struggled for the right words. As education, Mitchell suggested. As respect, Shelly corrected. They need to understand what I didn't, what I almost ruined. Barrett studied her for a moment before responding. Any such content would need to be vetted for security purposes, of course. But if you're serious about this, I am, Shelly said firmly, surprising herself with her conviction. I want to make this right. 3 days into her security training program, Shelly Thompson stood in the Wellington Palace training facility, sweat dripping down her face as she completed her 20th push-up. The makeup she'd habitually worn was gone, her previously styled hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her designer knockoffs replaced by standard-issue gear. "Keep going," Sarah Mitchell encouraged, monitoring her form. 10 more. These aren't for social media, these are for you. This had become Mitchell's mantra over the past few days, separating Shelly from her constant need to perform for an audience. Every exercise, every lesson, every briefing was about understanding rather than entertainment. 25, Shelly gasped, collapsing onto the training mat. I never knew security personnel had to be so fit. Physical conditioning is crucial, James Barrett explained, entering the training area. In crisis situations, you need strength, endurance, and clarity of mind. Speaking of which, are you ready for today's surveillance exercise? Shelly nodded, pulling herself up. The past few days had opened her eyes to aspects of security work she'd never considered. Each morning began with physical training, followed by tactical briefings, threat assessment scenarios, and practical exercises. Today's simulation, Barrett continued, will put you in our position. You'll maintain a fixed post while identifying potential security threats in a crowd. Mitchell will play various roles to test your observation skills. The training area had been set up to replicate a public space, complete with tourist markers and security checkpoints. Other training personnel would act as visitors, creating a realistic crowd scenario. Remember, Mitchell added, you're not just looking for obvious threats. Most security breaches begin with subtle indicators, patterns of movement, unusual behavior, inconsistent stories. Shelly took her position, standing at parade rest as she'd been taught. It felt strange being on this side of the equation, watching rather than performing. Her muscles already ached from the morning's training, but she found herself more focused than she'd ever been. The exercise began. Training personnel moved through the space, some clearly playing tourists, others with more ambiguous roles. Mitchell appeared periodically in different disguises. A lost elderly woman, a frustrated parent, an overly enthusiastic photographer. Talk us through what you're seeing, Barrett instructed through an earpiece. Shelly scanned the crowd, applying the observation techniques she'd learned. 2 individuals near the west entrance, moving in a pattern. They've passed the same point 3 times, but haven't taken photos like regular tourists would. Good. What else? The woman with the stroller, Mitchell's third character, she's positioning herself to block camera sightlines. And her bag... Shelly hesitated, remembering her training. The bag's too heavy for what a parent would typically carry, the weight's causing an unusual gait. Barrett's voice carried a note of approval. Excellent observation. Now maintain your post position while continuing to track these potential threats. This was the hardest part for Shelly, remaining still while her instincts screamed to act. She'd learned that visible security personnel often served as both deterrent and distraction, allowing plainclothes teams to maneuver unseen. The exercise continued for 2 hours. By the end, Shelly had successfully identified most of the planted security threats, though she'd missed some subtle ones that Barrett pointed out in the debrief. You're improving, he noted as they reviewed the exercise. Your attention to detail is getting sharper. However, you still occasionally fixate on obvious distractions at the expense of broader awareness. Shelly nodded, understanding the criticism. Like I did with my videos, I was so focused on creating a scene, I missed everything else happening around me. Speaking of videos, Mitchell interjected, have you given more thought to the educational content we discussed? Shelly had been working on a concept during her few free moments. I want to show the reality, not just the ceremonial aspects, but the actual work that goes into keeping places like this safe. Help others understand what I've learned. Show me what you have in mind, Barrett said, leading them to a secure briefing room. Shelly pulled out her notebook, no phones allowed during training hours, and shared her idea. It's a series called Beyond the Uniform. Each episode would focus on a different aspect of security work, showing the training, skills, and dedication required. No pranks, no mockery, just honest education. Mitchell nodded approvingly. And how would you address your previous behavior? That would be episode 1, Shelly said firmly. My story, how I went from disrespecting security personnel to understanding their vital role. I want to show my followers that it's possible to learn from mistakes, to grow beyond the need for attention at others' expense. Barrett studied the proposal. This could work, with proper security vetting, of course, but are you prepared for the response? Not all your followers will appreciate this change in direction. Shelly straightened her shoulders, a new confidence in her posture. Not the artificial bravado of her previous persona, but something more genuine. I don't need their approval anymore. This isn't about likes or views or going viral. It's about doing what's right. Well then, Mitchell smiled. Let's discuss how to make this happen without compromising security protocols. As they began planning the educational series, Shelly's phone buzzed in her locker down the hall. News outlets were still trying to contact her about the incident, and her social media notifications hadn't stopped. But for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about her online presence. Her focus was on the lesson plan in front of her, on the responsibility she'd accepted to help others understand what she'd learned. 1 week after her infamous live stream, Shelly Thompson sat in the Wellington Palace media room, staring at her reflection in the camera lens. Gone was the gaudy makeup and flashy clothes that had been her trademark. Instead, she wore a professional black blazer over her training uniform, her hair pulled back neatly, her expression serious. Are you ready? Sarah Mitchell asked, adjusting the camera settings. They had carefully vetted the location and angles to ensure no sensitive security information would be visible in the background. I think so. Shelly nodded, taking a deep breath. This feels different from my usual videos. That's because it is different, James Barrett said from his position behind the camera. This isn't about entertainment. It's about responsibility. The red recording light blinked on, and Shelly faced the camera, her hands clasped in her lap. Hey everyone, she began, then paused, shaking her head. No, let me start again. She looked directly into the lens, her voice carrying a new weight of authenticity. My name is Thompson. Many of you know me as Shelly from my social media pranks and stunts. A week ago, I came to Wellington Palace to make what I thought would be another funny video. I was wrong. Dangerously, irresponsibly wrong. She proceeded to explain the events of that day, carefully omitting sensitive details, but conveying the seriousness of what had transpired. The camera captured her changing expressions as she recounted her behavior and its potential consequences. What I didn't know, what I didn't bother to consider, was that the guard I was harassing was actively monitoring a serious security threat. My content creation could have compromised not just his safety, but the safety of everyone in that courtyard. Mitchell gave her an encouraging nod from behind the camera. They had rehearsed this part extensively, ensuring Shelly could convey the gravity of the situation without revealing classified information. This past week, I've been given an extraordinary opportunity to learn about real security work. Not the surface-level ceremony that tourists see, but the dedication, training and vigilance that goes into protecting places like Wellington Palace. Shelly stood up, moving to a prepared demonstration area where basic security equipment had been arranged for educational purposes. Did you know that security personnel undergo thousands of hours of training, that they must maintain peak physical condition while mastering complex surveillance techniques? She demonstrated some of the basic stance and observation exercises she'd learned, explaining their importance. That guard I mocked for just standing there, he was actually maintaining a tactical position that allowed him to monitor multiple areas simultaneously while staying ready to respond to any threat. The camera followed her as she moved through the demonstration, her movements now carrying the precision she'd learned in training. Every aspect of their presence is calculated. Their positioning, their stance, their situational awareness. What I saw as a joke was actually a carefully maintained security posture. Returning to her seat, Shelly's expression grew more serious. I'm making this video for two reasons. First, to apologize, not just to the guard I harassed, but to all security personnel I've disrespected in my previous videos, and second, to announce a change. She outlined her new series, Beyond the Uniform, explaining how it would educate viewers about security work while respecting operational confidentiality. No more pranks, no more mockery. Instead, I want to help others understand what I've learned. That respect isn't just about being polite, it's about recognizing the vital role these professionals play in keeping us safe. As Shelly continued speaking, her voice carried a conviction that had been absent from her previous content. She shared carefully screened clips from her training, showing the physical and mental demands of security work. Each segment had been reviewed to ensure no sensitive information was revealed. To my followers who enjoyed my previous content, I understand this change might disappoint you, but I hope you'll stay and learn with me. And to those I've offended or endangered with my past behavior, I promise to do better. The video concluded with Shelly back in her chair, her expression earnest. This isn't about views or likes anymore. It's about respect, responsibility, and recognition of the people who work tirelessly to keep us safe. Thank you for listening. Barrett called cut, and Shelly exhaled deeply, months of artificial persona falling away with her breath. How was that? She asked, looking between Barrett and Mitchell. Authentic, Mitchell replied, reviewing the footage. It strikes the right balance between informative and personal. Barrett nodded in agreement. The security details are appropriately general while still conveying the seriousness of the work. We'll have the full team review it before posting, but I think this will work. Shelly checked her phone, her first time doing so during training hours. The notification count was staggering. Missed calls, messages, comments on her previous videos. But instead of the usual excitement at the attention, she felt a new sense of responsibility. When can we start filming the training segments? She asked, already thinking about the educational content she wanted to create. The response to Shelly's new video was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of posting Beyond the Uniform, my wake-up call, her social media channels exploded with reactions. But unlike her previous viral moments, the comments carried a different tone. Sitting in the Wellington Palace security office, Shelly refreshed her screen, reading through the flood of responses with Mitchell and Barrett. This is what real growth looks like. Thank you for showing us the truth. Never thought about security work this way before. Finally, someone admits they were wrong and actually learns from it. But not all reactions were positive. Some of her longtime followers felt betrayed. Sell out, they're forcing you to make this. What happened to the real Shelly? Unfollowing. This is so boring now. They're not all happy, Shelly observed, scrolling through the mixed reactions. But somehow that doesn't bother me like it used to, because you're not seeking validation anymore, Mitchell noted, reviewing the analytics. You're sharing truth, not chasing attention. The video had already garnered more views than any of her previous prank content, and major news outlets were requesting interviews, but Barrett's phone call interrupted their review. "We have approval," he announced, hanging up. "The security board has cleared your proposal for the full Beyond the Uniform series with some conditions." Shelly sat up straighter, her training kicking in. "What are the parameters?" "Each episode must be vetted by our team before posting. No operational details, no specific security protocols. Focus on the human element, the training, dedication, and purpose behind the work." "When can we start?" Shelly asked, already reaching for her notebook where she'd been planning episode concepts. "Right now," Mitchell smiled. "We've arranged something special for today's shoot." They led Shelly to the palace's training facility, where she found something unexpected. The original guard she had harassed, now in training gear rather than his ceremonial uniform. "Officer Thomas Bradley," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I believe we've met, though under less favorable circumstances." Shelly felt her face flush with embarrassment, but she maintained her composure as her training had taught her. "It's an honor to properly meet you, Officer Bradley. I owe you an apology." "You've already given one," he replied, gesturing to her video. "Now I hear you want to learn about what really goes into standing guard." For the next several hours, Bradley walked Shelly through the intricate details of ceremonial guard duty, the hours of preparation, the physical demands of maintaining position, the constant mental alertness required. "Most people think we're just standing still," Bradley explained as Shelly attempted to maintain the proper stance. "But try keeping this position while simultaneously monitoring multiple sectors, processing potential threats, and maintaining situational awareness." Shelly's muscles trembled as she tried to hold the position. The camera captured her struggle, her face showing genuine effort rather than her old, exaggerated expressions. "How long do you maintain this stance during a shift?" she asked, her voice strained. 2 hours at a time," Bradley replied, "in all weather conditions, maintaining full alertness throughout." 2 hours? Shelly's eyes widened. "I can barely manage 2 minutes." "That's why we train constantly," he explained, adjusting her posture slightly. "The ceremonial aspect is just the surface. Underneath, we're always ready to respond." As they filmed, Bradley shared carefully cleared stories from his years of service. The threats prevented, the situations diffused, the constant vigilance required. Shelly listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed how far she'd come from her days of mockery. During a break in filming, Shelly checked her phone again. Her latest video had been picked up by several major news outlets, with headlines focusing on her transformation. Social media prankster's redemption from mockery to understanding. Beyond the pranks, influencer learns real meaning of security. Service. Wellington Palace incident leads to surprising educational partnership. "The media's interested in your story," Barrett observed. "But remember, this isn't about publicity." "I know," Shelly nodded, putting her phone away. "It's about respect and education. Speaking of which, Officer Bradley, would you be willing to share your perspective for the next episode? I think people need to hear directly from those they've disrespected." Bradley considered for a moment. "As long as it serves the educational purpose, I'm willing to participate." 2 weeks after her initial incident at Wellington Palace, Shelly Thompson faced her biggest challenge yet. The Beyond the Uniform series had gained significant traction, with her transformation video reaching millions of views. But today was different. She was returning to the exact spot where it all began. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah Mitchell asked, as they approached the palace courtyard. The morning sun cast the same golden light that had illuminated Shelley's infamous livestream, but everything else had changed. "I think so," Shelley replied, adjusting her professional attire. No more flashy tracksuits or attention-seeking outfits. "It feels strange being back here." James Barrett joined them, accompanied by Officer Thomas Bradley in his full ceremonial uniform. "Remember, this episode is crucial. It's not just about your journey. It's about helping others understand the consequences of treating security personnel as entertainment." The courtyard was already filling with tourists, their cameras ready to capture the majesty of Wellington Palace. Some recognized Shelley from her viral video and recent media coverage, whispering and pointing. "There she is, the one who tried to mess with the guard. Isn't that the TikTok girl who changed? I saw her new videos. They're actually really good." Shelley ignored the whispers, focusing on the task at hand. They had planned this episode carefully, a return to the scene, but with a completely different purpose. "Rolling," Mitchell called, activating the camera. Shelley stood in the exact spot where she had begun her ill-fated livestream 2 weeks earlier. "2 weeks ago, I stood here with very different intentions," she began, her voice steady. "I came to create what I thought would be entertaining content, to mock and provoke the guards for likes and views. Today, I'm here to show you what I couldn't see then." The camera followed as she walked through the courtyard, now pointing out the security features she had learned to recognize. The subtle positioning of guards, the strategic viewing angles, the coordinated movements of plainclothes personnel. "Every person you see in uniform here isn't just standing around," she explained. "They're part of a complex security network, constantly monitoring, assessing, and protecting. The stillness I once mocked is actually intense focus and dedication." Officer Bradley took his position at the same post where Shelley had harassed him. But this time, she stood beside him professionally, explaining to the camera what she had learned. "Officer Bradley maintains this position for 2-hour shifts, regardless of weather conditions," she detailed. "During that time, he's monitoring multiple sectors, processing potential threats, and maintaining constant situational awareness. The ceremonial uniform isn't a costume. It's a symbol of authority that allows security personnel to operate effectively in plain sight." As they filmed, a group of teenagers approached, phones raised, clearly intending to mock the guard, as Shelley once had. Without hesitation, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she addressed them directly, the camera capturing the interaction. "Before you do what I think you're planning, let me tell you a story." The teenagers recognized her. "Wait, aren't you that TikToker who—" "Yes," Shelley nodded, "and I learned the hard way that what you're about to do isn't just disrespectful, it's dangerous. Would you like to understand why?" What followed was an impromptu educational moment as Shelley explained to the teenagers and the growing crowd what she had learned during her training. She shared appropriate details about the physical demands, the mental focus required, and the vital importance of allowing security personnel to do their jobs without interference. "I used to think like you," she told them. "I thought it was all a show, something to joke about. But these guards aren't here for our entertainment. They're here to keep us safe, and they can't do that effectively if we're distracting them." The teenagers lowered their phones, their expressions shifting from amusement to understanding. "We didn't think about it that way," one admitted. "Neither did I," Shelley replied. "But now I know better, and so do you." Barrett, watching from behind the camera, gave an approving nod. This unscripted moment captured exactly what their series was trying to achieve. Real education leading to genuine change. As they continued filming, Shelley noticed something that would have escaped her attention 2 weeks ago. A man in the crowd was moving in a suspicious pattern, his behavior triggering the warning signs she'd learned to recognize during her training. Without breaking character on camera, she used the subtle hand signals she'd been taught to alert the security team. Within minutes, plainclothes officers had quietly intercepted the individual, leading him away for questioning without disturbing. The peaceful atmosphere of the courtyard. "Did you see that?" Mitchell asked during a filming break. "The suspicious movement pattern." "Yes," Shelly replied. 2 weeks ago, I would have been too focused on myself to notice. And now, you're helping to maintain the security you once disrupted," Barrett observed. "That's real growth." The impact of Shelly's Beyond the Uniform series extended far beyond Wellington Palace. 3 weeks after her initial incident, she sat in a conference room at the National Security Training Center, surrounded by representatives from various security organizations across the country. "Your educational content has sparked something remarkable," the head of training, Commander Richard Hayes, explained. "We've seen a significant decrease in reported incidents of harassment towards security personnel at major landmarks and institutions." Shelly, dressed in a professional Navy suit, a far cry from her former flashy attire, sat between Sarah Mitchell and James Barrett as they reviewed the statistics. The numbers were compelling. A 30% reduction in security interference incidents at monitored sites and a 45% increase in public cooperation with security protocols. "But it's not just the numbers," Hayes continued, pulling up a series of social media screenshots. "You've created a cultural shift in how younger people view security personnel." The screens displayed viral trends inspired by Shelly's transformation. A respect, the uniform, beyond the prank, security awareness. Shelly was right. "Your latest episode has over 5 million views," Mitchell noted, reviewing the analytics. "And the educational impact is clear from the comments." Shelly scrolled through some of the recent responses, "Never realized how much training goes into this job. Changed how I see security guards forever. Showed this to my kids to teach them respect. Finally, someone using their platform for good. We'd like to expand the program," Hayes proposed. "Take your message nationwide." Security organizations across the country have expressed interest in participating in your educational series. Barrett handed Shelly a folder containing proposals from various institutions, museums, government buildings, airports, and other high-security facilities. "They see the value in what we've created here." "But," Shelly said thoughtfully, "this isn't about me anymore, is it? It's about the message." "Exactly," Mitchell agreed. "Which is why we have another proposal." Hayes pulled up a new presentation. "We want to create a comprehensive educational program, with you as one of the key trainers. Not just video content, but actual security awareness training for schools, organizations, and public institutions." The proposal outlined a nationwide initiative, workshops, training sessions, and educational materials, all designed to foster understanding and respect for security personnel. Shelly's story would be a cornerstone, but the program would extend far beyond her personal journey. "Your experience gives you unique credibility," Barrett explained. "You've been on both sides, the disruptor and now the advocate. That perspective is invaluable." As they discussed the details, Officer Thomas Bradley entered the room. He had become a regular contributor to the Beyond the Uniform series, his dignified presence adding authority to their message. "We've received another interesting development," Bradley announced. "Several former pranksters have reached out, asking to participate in our awareness program. They were inspired by your transformation." Shelly thought back to her own journey. From the embarrassment of that first day to the pride she now felt in contributing to something meaningful. "They need to understand this isn't about views or followers," she said firmly. "That's exactly why we need you involved." Hayes nodded. You can speak their language while conveying our message. The meeting continued as they planned the next phase of their initiative. Shelly's phone buzzed occasionally with notifications, but she no longer felt the compulsive need to check them. Her priorities had shifted completely. "There's one more, a thing," Mitchell added, pulling up a final slide. "The International Security Conference has invited you to be a keynote speaker. They want you to share your story and the impact of the Beyond the Uniform program." Shelly sat back, momentarily overwhelmed. 3 weeks ago, she had been dancing in front of a royal guard, seeking laughs and likes. Now she was being asked to address international security professionals about respect and responsibility. "Your story resonates because it's authentic," Barrett reminded her, seeing her expression. "You're not just telling people to change, you're showing them why they should want to." 1 month after her infamous live stream at Wellington Palace, Shelly Thompson stood at the podium of the International Security Conference, facing an audience of security professionals from around the world. The transformation was complete, not just in her appearance, but in her entire demeanor. "A month ago," she began, her voice steady and professional, "I was a different person. Someone who thought security personnel were props for entertainment, who believed that disrespect could be justified if it got enough likes and views. Today, I stand before you not just as a changed person, but as living proof that understanding can transform ignorance into respect." The massive conference hall was packed with security directors, training officers, and facility managers, all focused on her words. In the front row, James Barrett, Sarah Mitchell, and Officer Thomas Bradley sat alongside Commander Hayes, their presence supporting her message. "The Beyond the Uniform program has shown us something remarkable," Shelly continued, displaying statistics from their educational initiative. "When people understand the reality behind security work, the training, the dedication, the constant vigilance, their behavior changes. Not because they're forced to, but because they want to." She shared clips from their latest educational videos, showing the impact across different facilities. Security incidents had decreased significantly at sites where their program had been implemented. More importantly, public cooperation with security protocols had improved dramatically. "But this isn't just about numbers," Shelly emphasized. "It's about cultural change. We're seeing young people, especially social media influencers, shift from mocking security personnel to respecting and supporting their work." The presentation showed various social media trends that had emerged from their initiative. Former pranksters were now creating content promoting security awareness. The very platform that had once encouraged disruptive behavior was becoming a tool for positive change. "The most powerful lesson I've learned," Shelly continued, "is that real influence isn't about followers or views. It's about impact. Every security officer who can now do their job without harassment, every facility that's safer because people understand rather than interfere, that's real influence." As she concluded her speech, the applause was genuine and sustained. Security professionals from around the world had witnessed something they rarely saw: genuine transformation and accountability. After the presentation, Shelly joined Barrett, Mitchell, and Bradley in reviewing the next phase of their program. International security organizations were adopting their training materials, and educational institutions were incorporating their awareness curriculum. "You've started something significant," Barrett observed. "This goes beyond Wellington Palace. Now." Shelly nodded, thinking back to that morning when she'd arrived at the palace gates with her bag of cheese puffs and misguided intentions. "I never thought my biggest mistake would lead to my most meaningful work." "That's because it stopped being about you," Mitchell smiled. "It became about something bigger." Officer Bradley, who had become a respected mentor in Shelly's journey, added his perspective. You turned embarrassment into education, disrespect into understanding. That's no small achievement. As they left the conference center, Shelly noticed a group of young influencers filming near the entrance. Instead of creating disruptive content, they were participating in the Respect the Uniform challenge, highlighting the importance of security work. See that? Bradley gestured toward them. That's your legacy. Not the pranks, not the viral moments of mockery, but this, helping others understand what you learned. Shelly's phone buzzed with a notification. Her latest educational video had passed 6 million views, but the numbers no longer mattered to her. What mattered were the comments showing real understanding, the messages from other content creators, asking how they could support security awareness, the stories of changed perspectives and newfound respect. So, Commander Hayes approached their group. Are you ready for what's next? Shelly straightened her shoulders, her posture reflecting the discipline she'd learned during her training. The work's not done, she replied. As long as there are people who don't understand the importance of security work, there's more to do. The sun set over the conference center as they discussed future plans, more training programs, expanded educational content, international cooperation initiatives. Shelly Thompson, once known for mocking authority, had found her true calling in teaching others to respect it. And somewhere in Wellington Palace, a royal guard stood at his post, maintaining his vigilant watch, no longer a target for pranks, but a symbol of dedication that more people now understood and respected. If you enjoyed this incredible story of transformation and respect, don't forget to check out 2 more amazing stories coming up next on your screen. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us for more inspiring content. This is just the beginning of our journey together. Remember to leave a comment below sharing how this story changed your perspective on security personnel. Your thoughts matter, and they help us create more meaningful content for you. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.